not just stress from work or family, but the actual stressor affecting your mental health could be your neighborhoods. Today, in our research paper Decode, we will try to understand some general terms such as urban heat islands, and some common epidemiological and statistical concepts referenced in this paper. An urban heat island occurs when urban areas become significantly warmer than surrounding rural areas. While the urban heat islands have been linked to physical health problems, little is known about their impact on mental health. Let's find out more. But, before we explore this study, let's consider watching this video to learn about urban heat islands in greater detail. What if we could follow hundreds of thousands of people for nearly 2 decades and see how their environment affects their health? That's exactly what the researchers did. They conducted a prospective cohort analysis of urban middle-aged and older residents to assess whether high temperatures contribute to mental health symptoms. Utilizing the data from the UK Biobank, researchers followed over 338,000 participants for around 13 years. The researchers measured exposure to high temperatures through land surface temperature. The land surface temperature refers to how hot the Earth's surface becomes. Satellites detect heat emitted from roads, rooftops, vegetation, and other surfaces, then convert that information into temperature maps. Urban surfaces like concrete and asphalt typically become much hotter than natural landscapes, making land surface temperature a key indicator for studying urban heat islands. Let me know if you need a full video on this. I will surely share and tag it here in the coming days. Additionally, the researcher also used the urban heat island intensity, which was the temperature difference between urban and rural areas. For instance, the urban area has a surface temperature of 38 degrees Celsius, while the rural area is 28 degrees Celsius. The difference is 10 degrees Celsius, so the urban heat island intensity equals 10 degrees Celsius. A larger intensity indicates a stronger urban heat island effect and greater heat exposure in cities. To answer a cause and effect question, researchers need a study design that can tell a story over time. So they chose a cohort study. In this study, the researchers assessed urban heat island exposure among participants from the UK Biobank. They followed these participants for several years and recorded various outcomes, including depression, anxiety, and substance use disorders. This design qualifies the study as a prospective study, as exposure was measured first, followed by the observation of outcomes. Why didn't the researchers simply take a quick survey and finish the study in a day? Because they needed to answer an important question. Did heat exposure happen before the mental health condition? A cohort study helps establish temporality. Researchers measure exposure first. Then they observe what happens later. This allows them to determine whether exposure came before the outcome. On the other hand, a cross-sectional study measures everything at one point in time. Remember, in the other Research Decode video, we said it gives a snapshot of the population. In such a study, it is difficult to determine whether heat exposure occurred before the mental health condition or not. Similarly, a case control study could look backwards in time, but it is more vulnerable to biases, and does not allow researchers to directly observe the development of disease over a course of time. While a randomized control trial would provide stronger evidence, it would be impossible and unethical to randomly assign people to live in hotter urban environments for many years. Therefore, a cohort study was best suited in this context, as it offered the best balance between scientific rigor and real-world feasibility. Before blaming heat, researchers had to rule out the usual suspects that could influence the results, like age, education, chronic diseases, and many others which can influence both heat exposure and mental health. These factors are called confounders. If ignored, they can create misleading conclusions. To reduce this problem, researchers adjusted for these variables during analysis. For example, age, sex, income, education, lifestyle habits, and chronic diseases may affect both heat exposure and mental health outcomes. If these factors are not accounted for, they can distort the true relationship between exposure and outcome. To address this, the researchers statistically adjusted for these variables, allowing them to better estimate the independent effect of urban heat island exposure on mental health. Now, let's look for some statistical frameworks used in this article. Imagine tracking thousands of people for years and asking one question: who develops the condition first? The Cox model is designed for exactly that situation. It analyzes time-to-event data. It accounts for different follow-up durations. And it adjusts for confounders. This allowed researchers to estimate how urban heat island exposure influenced the risk of developing mental health disorders over time. The findings indicate that higher urban heat island exposure correlates with increased mental health issues. Similarly, hotter urban areas had higher risks compared to cooler ones. Certain groups, particularly women and individuals with hypertension or coronary artery disease, were more vulnerable to the effects of urban heat island exposure. And now a bonus slide for the viewers who stayed till the end. A particularly novel aspect of this study was the inclusion of brain imaging data from over 28,000 participants. Researchers found that urban heat island exposure was associated with alterations in white matter and neural connectivity, and discovered potential neurobiological pathways linking heat exposure to mental illness. The authors propose several pathways through which urban heat islands may affect mental health, as mentioned in this slide for your reference. Interesting, isn't it? Whoop, that was a great deal of learning. Hope you managed to stay till the end. Well, thank you for stopping by, and I hope you find this interesting. Meet you next time with one more research.